7. The Raid.
Mindful of all Nebulon had imparted to him as he rested that night, Zack moved himself out of his body. Leaving his physical form to sleep, he experienced a new freedom. As Nebulon's instructions had indicated, it hadn't required any power. All he'd had to do to let go of his body was dispel the agreement ingrained by time that they were inextricably attached. At first, he didn't venture too far for fear of losing contact. Greater distances would require more practice. In gaining this new ability, he laid aside reservations he'd had about the restaurant owner. His instincts confirmed his trust in the old man. That's all he'd ever had to guide him. Nebulon could see right through him anyway. He passed through the wall, through the room where Flash was sleeping, and into the outside strip's artificially lit night. The entertainment district never slept. A large ape-like man, wearing a Starship engineer's uniform, strolled down the neatly laid out walkway. On his arm, a petite dark-haired girl walked quickly to match his longer strides. The sheer size of the ape-man's physique made the girl appear small. Their contrasting features indicated they were from areas far removed. This wasn't an unusual sight. Zack had lived amongst this entertainment city's interplanetary visitors for some time. He'd also seen these ape-like men as waiters in a picturesque club situated in the Morning Sun sector on Delta 4B. The girl was gorgeous. Zack's appreciation of attractive ladies was no different in his new state exterior to his body. For some reason, he was curious about the ape man as well. Zack's awareness surrounded them as the unlikely pair continued along the walkway. Other people milling about the area didn't capture his attention to the same degree. All his interest was drawn to the petite form on the arm of the immense physique. Cautiously, he probed the ape-man's mind. For someone who appeared so physical, a surprising volume of technical data presented itself. Having little interest in technology, he transferred his attention to the shapely dark-haired girl beside him. She wore an ice-white, close-fitting garment of shiny fabric. It looked a little out of time compared to other women on the walkway. Most of them sported the currently fashionable transparent look. Their revealing styles, however, didn't match the slim lady's faultless form or the way she wore her conservative clothes. The rhythm of her strides fascinated Zack. He probed her mind as well. As different as her appearance to the ape-man, so were her thought patterns. Hers were in terms of art and music, which didn't interest Zack much more than the engineering data. Zack became curious as to the relationship between the diverse couple. On probing deeper, he found their association based on mutual fondness, not extending to sexual activity. It was rather that of brother and sister. This implausibility left Zack confused. Perhaps this improbable information had something to do with his lack of experience in being exterior to his body. Then Zack sensed Nebulon's beingness close at hand. Taking in the street, Nebulon's physical form wasn't present. He too was there without his body. Zack now felt further out of his depth. The more experienced Nebulon dispelled Zack's concern and confirmed Zack's assessment of the diverse pair. It seemed Nebulon had been just as interested in the couple, but suddenly he was gone. Zack remembered his body. He'd forgotten about it.
Is it still okay?
He thought. In the instant of his concern, he found himself in his body's immediate vicinity. Moving into his physical form automatically, he felt tired. Society had been thoroughly conditioned in the belief that sleep was normal, and his body soon complied. Weariness crept in unnoticed and uninvited, rendering him lost to the oblivion of sleep. Zack was called to Nebulon's office at the beginning of the next work sequence. Eagerly, Zack made his way there. Nothing was said for a while after their initial greeting. The concern Zack had previously experienced no longer inhibited his emotions. He found himself quite at ease in Nebulon's presence now. There was a change in Nebulon as well. The screen shielding his private thoughts had been lifted, leaving them on equal footing. Having developed differently, Nebulon's imparted information was eagerly assimilated. Know-how, perceptions, experiences, and associated deductions were transferred unhindered. However, knowledge also requires dedicated practice to allow proficiency, which would come later. Their newfound trust brought about Nebulon's inclusion into Zack's exclusive world of friends. One more person he, Zentran, and Fora could count on, with the overwhelming odds stacked against them. Zack became aware of Nebulon's throaty voice echoing a thought pattern. Was it some sort of parable?
Once there was time, when time began, and once there was time, spirit entered man. When man is old, and spirit grows cold, who will show the way for children to play?
There was something the old man wanted him to know, but found difficulty expressing. The poem hinted of it.
What is it, sir?
Patience, young man. Future beckons. Only we can make it good or make it bad.
Nebulon held on to something dearly. Zack could sense it. There was grief and loss attached to something buried deep in Nebulon's mind. Unwanted emotion had sown it into seclusion.
A lady? A child? A soulmate and a princess.
Flash walked in, and Zack felt Nebulon's screen go up. He wondered why, as Flash was no threat. Flash didn't get a chance to say anything, as Nebulon stood up and walked around his desk.
Have a seat in my chair, Flash.
Nebulon's voice was almost too quiet, but lacked no authority as he pointed to the chair he just vacated.
Follow me, Zack.
This was expressed in the same subdued manner, but the weight of intention clearly indicated it wasn't a request. Zack followed him through the back entrance into the lane outside the restaurant, leaving Flash seated behind the owner's desk.
Put up the thought screen, Zack.
Zack complied, using know-how he'd gained from Nebulon's thought transfer a few moments earlier. Nebulon poured instructions into Zack's mind.
The restaurant is being raided, and we can't take the risk of you being here. Spend some time at the Octagon's bar. You'll like it there.
Nebulon smiled, but Zack didn't get whatever it was he was amused about. His screen was well in place.
What about Flash?
He'll be okay. The agents will sense he's no threat.
And you?
I've handled them before.
What do you want me to do?
Don't come back to the Tarkton restaurant. And don't go home either for at least 10 sequences. You're now officially on leave. If I'm not around when you return, take over control as the new owner. I'll contact you mentally when necessary.
The two men looked at each other.
Be on your way then.
Nebulon watched Zack go, turned, and re-entered the back entrance of the restaurant. Zack wandered aimlessly through the bustling amusement area. He eventually sat down in a park on a lawn of synthetic grass. It seemed real to the extent of the freshly hewn fragrance it secreted. A Qton came over and looked him in the eye. It was a magnificent creature, similar to the ones he and Zentran had known in the Dark Zone on Delta 4B. Its eyes appeared less sensitive and didn't radiate light. He liked Qtons, but this one he resented. Some weak mental activity probed him. His screen was up and he thought nothing more of it. The Qton lost interest and wandered off. Lying on the synthetic grass, facing the sky, he wondered about Zentran and Fora. Zentran was on his way back from an extended freighting trip a galaxy away. He thought about Nebulon and found himself in the Darkton restaurant. Nebulon had instructed him not to go there, but he hadn't done it intentionally. His body still lay on the synthetic grass in the park. He decided to observe and assist if necessary. Nebulon and Flash were seated at a table opposite two lookalikes. The lookalikes' electric probes weren't very strong, but there was something uncanny about them. Undetected, Zack caught a question fired by one.
Have you experienced any strange occurrences?
Well, business has been slow. It's not the tourist season yet when weird ones come from the outlying solar systems.
Answered Nebulon.
Any objects moving on their own, or unusual people stating ability to control matter mentally and the like?
Why no?
Chuckled Nebulon.
Everyone knows that's impossible.
People that crazy wouldn't come to the Darkton restaurant.
Flash said in earnest, looking at Nebulon for approval. Nebulon's expression didn't change as he acknowledged Flash with a nod. Zack wondered if Nebulon could sense his presence, but the only thoughts available with Nebulon's screen in place were those intended for the pseudo-humans. Carefully, Zack sought for possible thought patterns in the lookalikes. He found strangely perceivable electronic ideas. They were suspicious of Nebulon. Mistrust was connected to a lady, something Nebulon hadn't finished telling him about earlier. A question formed in a lookalike's data processor designed to throw Nebulon off guard.
Have you heard from Famsu?
No, I haven't heard from my wife since she was taken away by agents. No one has heard from her.
He paused.
Do you know what happened to her?
Nebulon was visibly upset, but he was a master with the thought screen. The lookalikes picked up only what they were intended to. A code consisting of letters and numbers went through a lookalike's data processor in response to Nebulon's counter-question. It seemed to have something to do with the central computer on Delta 4B. The same code went through the other lookalike's processor a moment later. It stood up quickly and asserted,
Let's go.
The lookalikes left by the front door and strode off in the direction of the park with the synthetic grass. Their purpose was not to apprehend Zack, whose body still lay there, but to reach the aircar pad beyond. As they passed the park, the Qton met them and followed them along the walkway.
Surely they can't be using Qtons as agents as well.
But evidently they were. Nebulon's instruction on the use of the screen had served him well. It could even have just saved him. Zack entered his body and got to his feet. Nebulon had said he should spend some time at the Occupants Bar. Not having anything else to do, and intrigued by the amusement Nebulon had displayed with the suggestion, he decided to pay the bar a visit. He headed for a walkway information center. The alphanumeric code sequence also came to mind.
What does DAL374TA have to do with the central computer on Delta 4B?
The Occupants Bar became less important. he felt Nebulon's presence with him. Lowering his screen, he transferred what he'd monitored at the meeting. Nebulon was just as interested in the significance of the code.
I can go to Delta 4B and access the Council's computer.
Volunteered Zack.
It's risky, but you have the gall and the ability to pull it off. Against you will be force of numbers, but with you will be surprise and a lack of preparation for the type of power you possess.
I won't need to go there with my body. Also, Zentran will be back soon.
You need more proficiency to operate without it over long distances and prolonged periods of time. It has been known,
Nebulon warned.
if one remains distant to one's body for extended periods of time, on returning, the body is found to have been taken over by another being. With this new being firmly interiorized into the body, it sometimes cannot be evicted.
Zack shuddered. Nebulon offered the use of his space cruiser. It was a small, fast vehicle suitable within planetary atmospheres, as well as intermediate interplanetary space travel, ideal for the mission.